It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Aggronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belgast, and let's start the show. Hey folks, it's that time again, time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 224. Tonight I'm joined by Ashgar.
Hello.
Kodra Prime!
I mean, I'm only Kodra Prime because I had to kill off all of those Kodras before we started the podcast.
It's true. Sleepy Tam.
Hey, what's up?
So, I feel like I have to start the show with an explanation of why we didn't have a podcast last week.
We had bonus content.
Yeah, we had another one of those streams, kind of like that time Grace and I streamed, because when you just have two people, it doesn't make for a great podcast. Like, it's a, two-way conversation, and it feels weird, but...
Sorry for all the people we know who have two-person podcasts.
That's not an us thing. Like, I had a two-person podcast with Bellfolk stuff, and, like, it was fine, but it's not this show. So I fully support Kodra and Ash's decision not to actually do the podcast as a duo. Like last week I was at a wedding, and Grace has been kidnapped to the nation's capital, and Tam and Thalen were both in Japan, and now Tam is back, and I'm kind of surprised that you're on this podcast, given that you've been up for like a day and a half.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I've got to stay up somehow. Like,
you're trying to cure the jet lag by just not sleeping?
Yeah. It's working so far.
But if you land on the keyboard and start snoring, we'll just politely remove you from the channel.
Yeah, it seems reasonable.
So yeah, and I think Thalen is gone for another full week.
Yeah.
He's in Nagano this week, I think.
Well, at least for a few days.
Yeah. Anyway. So yeah, we're in a weird state with our podcast. So you're just gonna have to bear with it. However, Tam, tell us wonderful things from Japan.
There's so many.
It's been super interesting, watching our podcast Slack and your Instagram, and now you're an Instagram celebrity.
I'm not sure about that part. I have a lot of so as it turns out, tagging my location on Instagram is both easy and gets me a bunch of random followers who leave me comments in Japanese, which is unhelpful. They're probably about to be really disappointed because I'm going to go back to not really using Instagram that much. But, I think I'll try to keep it at least vaguely games related, but I have a lot more context about a lot of games that I've played. That it's interesting and really weird. I wandered into Shinjuku, specifically Kabuchiko, and immediately knew my way around, perfectly. And walking into a place you've never been and knowing where everything is before you see it is a really off-putting experience. But thanks, Yakuza Games, for an almost frame-perfect rendition of Kabuchiko. And I've spent enough time running around in that game to have a pretty good idea of where everything is. So it's oh, there's the bowling alley. Oh, there's the arcade. Here's 6 restaurants. Here's where all the bars are. It's really weird that I can just figure this out. Oh, that shrine is actually there.
So it's weird to me, how close it would be then. Because I can't say that, the equivalent would be true. Even though I've seen a lot of games set in New York City, I don't feel like it would tell me a damn thing about New York City that would be useful.
I hear Spider-Man is very much that level of detail of at least the specific part of New York that it's set upon.
New York also covers a very large amount of actual area.
Yeah, and I think that might be what's going on here. A lot of times, games like GTA are these interpretations of cities, but not actual cities. Whereas, in Yakuza, they change the name, but it's the same place. And it's not even, it's not like subtly the same place. It's legitimately the exact same place. Like Persona 5 was the same thing. My very first day was basically like me doing video game tourism, where I went and I basically like traced all of the subway stops that show up on in Persona 5, which was really neat. I did have a few, like, I'm like wandering around some relatively, sleepy residential district and getting the occasional look from somebody like, what are you even doing here? Like, you clearly don't belong here. What would possibly have you wandering around this, like, random place? As it turns out, it's Sangenjaya, which is Youngenjaya, which is, pretty quiet.
I mean, you can't be the only person who's done this thing.
I haven't, although it's died down recently, and I guess Atlas was like, "Hey, Persona fans, like, please stop bothering people in these actual places." So it was more quiet than not, but like immediately recognizable. And Shinjuku is the same way.
I imagine that in Shinjuku was where just the Yakuza series set.
Yeah, it's also where I want to say the red light district in so in Persona 5 there's Yongenjaya, which matches up with Sangenjaya. There's Ayama Ichome, which is where your school is, which is just an actual station. And there's Shibuya Station Square, which is basically where my hotel was, and is also there was a bunch of construction going on around it. So it wasn't exactly the way it was in the game, but it was immediately recognizable. Although I do think it's really funny, Shibuya Station Square in Persona 5 is basically where the Hachiko statue is, except that the Hachiko statue is just barely out of frame in every Persona 5 screenshot. Like the visual of you being in Shibuya Station Square, the Hachiko statue, the like famous Hachiko statue is just barely out of view, which I think is really funny. And then there's the red light district, which is just Shinjuku.
That makes me wonder if they couldn't get the rights to use the statue.
It's possible. The sketchy alley with the airsoft guy is definitely recognizably right there in Shibuya.
Also recognizably a sketchy alley.
There's no airsoft shop there, but otherwise it's identical. There are a lot of little things like that. Just very, very close details that I didn't expect. Like, even a lot of the same stores are in the same places. I don't get the impression, even in Tokyo, that there's as much business churn.
What do you mean by that?
Like
stores are just there for a really long time?
Yeah. Like, maybe there's more than I realize, like, especially on some of the main streets and some of the really big stores. But, like, I'm so used to I'm so used to like city blocks, which are broken out into individual buildings, which are stores. And then like one of these buildings closes and a new either building pops up or a new store opens in that building. And like, that's a constant cycle that the whole like, hey, this is a building with 7 floors and there's a different store on each floor. And a little sign saying, please pay for your stuff on each given floor. Don't go up the escalator to the other one. In one place there was like this like half-size door leads into a cafe. If you like crouch down and go through this door, you can go through a cafe on the like 2.5th floor. And
wait, there are half floors?
I mean, in this case there was. It was just sort of like crammed in there between some other floors.
This gives some context to like the department store in Pokemon.
Yes.
I mean, I get what you're saying, though, on the churn, though. Like, I went to Dallas this weekend, and we were last in Dallas in April, which wasn't that long ago. And there were several things that had closed and or opened as something else in that,
few month
span? Yeah.
Whereas, like, I ate at multiple restaurants and wandered into multiple stores that had been around for like 20 years. Just like little hole-in-the-wall stores. 20 years. I mean, there was a figure store in Akihabara, which, wow, that's an overwhelming place. Like, if you
if you decided that you weren't getting enough sensory load, I've got a place for you to go. I was well trained by my years of an overly modded WoW UI. It's all like bright lights and flashing things and text all over the place. Because like when every like 7-story building has 7 or 8 different stores in it, you need a sign for all of them, which means there's signs for everything everywhere. Also, if you're taller than about 5'10", it's going to be a nightmare.
Yeah, this is in part why I think Japan and I just will never see eye to eye.
No,
given that I'm 6'4" and rather large, so
I have a buddy that I was wandering around with who's
Rebo.
Yeah, Rebo, who's like 6'2" and also a pretty big guy, and he was like, I am too big for this country. I just don't I don't fit through doors. I definitely don't fit up and down stairwells. I barely fit in elevators. Like, yeah.
It's also bathrooms are the things that I've heard from other people that are 6+, that bathrooms are a challenge because like the stalls themselves just aren't big enough for a human being that size.
I can believe that. I didn't have too much of a problem. Elevators were what got me. I had not previously been in a 4-foot square elevator.
Wow.
But that 4-foot square elevator helpfully informed me that 6 people fit in there. And I was like, all right.
I disagree with your math.
Thalen and I went into an elevator in Akihabara that had literally like big, bright anime people advertising in just garish colors on every surface. We're like, the elevator opens and it's like 30 bright, cheerful anime faces shouting at you from all 4 walls. And then we get in, the doors closed. On the inside of the doors, there's even more. Thalen turns to me and is like, I'm feeling very attacked right now. But
Thalen is probably like the largest you can be in Japan and be okay. Because like, he is not super tall and he is very slender. So like, I feel like maybe he fits okay.
Yeah, he and I are very similarly sized. And yeah, we're about the upper limit. I definitely had a few times where I was like, oh, I'm going to hit my head. But yeah, one of the other than deja vu from recognizing places that I had never been, and like video game tourism, the other thing was you know how Japanese games, like especially RPGs, you'll go into a hotel and it'll have that hotel like JRPG hotel music, or you'll go into the inevitable lottery place and it'll have JRPG lottery music. Or
that's actual thing.
Absolutely. It's like recognizably the same music. Even there's like a particular tone. I was walking past a TV that was playing like a phone shopping thing, and it was that same like upbeat kind of thing. Like I understand why they're so ubiquitous, because there's no artistic license being taken. It's just like this.
It's just a cultural element. Yeah.
Yeah. Listening to mall music, like this is the shopping mall music. I've heard.
So it's basically the equivalent of every elevator playing "Girl from Ipanema."
Yeah. Yes. I have been in aircraft with less complicated consoles than some of the toilets. I definitely did not have the wherewithal to try all of the buttons. I tried a few of them and was quite happy about it, but there were a few where I was like, this has 24 buttons. I can't read, like, 24 buttons and I can't read any of them. Maybe not. I definitely got by with not very much Japanese, although reading up on etiquette beforehand was super helpful. And oh wow, can you get any video game related thing, a video game, anime, whatever related thing in Akihabara?
Yeah, I've also heard you can get any video game related thing in a machine in Akihabara.
Yeah. We were like, there's stores that are just, it's a storefront and you walk in and it's just 100 capsule machines. You like browse the capsule machines and see if there's anything particularly exciting. I found one that was dispensing little fruit birds.
Tiny cherry birds?
Well, there was the cherry birds. There was a kiwi fruit bird. I think there was a banana. It was kind of surreal. I really do like the just like ridiculous specificity of some of the shops. Like seeing like the Pokemon Center was pretty awesome. Like, oh hey, do you want to play? Let's go. The new Switch game early. Like, we got a little kiosk for you to do that. Also, here's plushies of like every starter Pokemon ever, and then like 100 other Pokemon, and also Halloween Gengar.
The set that was like all of the Pokemon as copied by Ditto was pretty great.
Incredibly niche. Like it was amazing how niche some places got. I wandered past a store that was only colorful candy. Like it had a sign of the signs that it had translated into English. There was one that was no boring colors allowed. And this was like a 4-story candy shop that just did brightly colored candy. Like that was their whole thing.
You also got to experience the wonders of Japanese Kit Kat.
Yes, that's also a thing. One of the 300 flavors of Kit Kats in Japan.
But did you try Tokyo Banana?
I did.
I have no idea what that would taste like.
I mean, it's a kind of cake.
I mean, like, it looks like a banana flavored Twinkie, but I have a feeling it doesn't taste anything like a banana flavored Twinkie.
I mean, it's like I'm trying to think of a nice way of putting this. It's like a banana flavored Twinkie if Twinkies cared about you. Which is a recurring theme for actually a lot of food. Like Thalen put it really, really well when he commented that the food quality floor in Japan is way higher than in the US. To the point where there are places that I cheerfully went and ate meals at, like full, this is what I'm going to do for a meal on purpose, that I would never do in the States. Like, I cheerfully had multiple meals out of the 7-Eleven hot cabinet, which, like dinner. Like, I would go get dinner at a 7-Eleven, and it was delicious. It was, like, super high quality, like, rice balls, and you could even get sushi, although I didn't. Little, katsu.
I mean, if you got sushi at a 7-Eleven in the United States, you would probably die from food poisoning.
Yeah.
I mean, like, just being dead honest there.
But no,
I won't even eat sushi on like a buffet because, again, I don't want to die from food poisoning.
Yeah, and this is the land of conveyor belt sushi, where you sit at a table and a thing goes by and you pick what you like.
That, like, we have that here, but it freaks me the hell out. Because, like, I don't know how long it's been riding around on that little train.
I feel like it's not great here.
Oh, that was the other thing at the place we went. A given plate only goes around half of the conveyor belt. There's a kitchen on the one we went to. There's a kitchen on either side, on either end of the full restaurant conveyor belt. And I would watch plates. If a plate made it into a kitchen from the other kitchen, it would not come out the other side.
Which makes me wonder, like, what is the rate of dead sushi?
It was really low. Well, this place, the way this place also operated was only about 10% of the sushi was random sushi on the conveyor belt. You ordered off of a tablet. Also, ordering off of a tablet was pretty common. Like, there's a little iPad sitting at your table, and you use that to order food.
Yeah, I saw the pictures from the Eorzea Cafe of, like, that tablet.
Yeah, that was super common. There was a gyoza place that did the same thing. Bars would do the same thing. I don't
understand why we don't do that here, honestly.
I don't either.
Especially considering how cheap some tablets are. Like, you could easily drop, like, one of the El Cheapo Amazon 7-inch Fire tablets on every table.
Mm-hmm.
But if it walks off, that's way worse than a menu.
I mean, but it's, like, real cheap if you order them in bulk.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's the thing, is that, like, here, yeah, you'd have to worry about people stealing them. And there, they just don't. Like, I've never felt so safe. I was weirded out because I walked down, it was like, the friend was showing me around, and
he was like, "Oh yeah, let's go down over here. This is where all the bars are." And it's like the sketchiest looking alley I've ever seen. It was like, "Oh, let's duck through this thing that looks like Stab Alley." And no, you like slip through this thing, and now suddenly you're in this cheerful alley with a bunch of, happy bar signs. It's like sort of sketchy, but not super sketchy. It was less sketchy than like ladies in maid outfits suggesting I go up to their maid cafe.
Didn't they also want you to play Magic the Gathering?
Also that one was weird.
Maid cafes are a little weird.
I mean, like, already kind of squicky, honestly, for me. But the, like, come draft some Magic cards with people dressed up like maids and butlers seems like a weird theme. But again, this is also, like, I also walked down Otome Road, and which is named for reasons you can probably predict, in the, like, Akihabara for ladies section of town, where, like, hey, do you want your scantily clad butler cafe? Here you go. Collect and trade the coasters of eye candy anime characters, all dudes. Trade them in the park. I say that I actually liked Ikebukuro. Ikebukuro was really chill.
One of my coworkers has, I think, 6 coasters from Eorzean Cafe.
Oh, nice. Yeah, Thalen was like one stamp away from his prize card.
So you also played quite a bit of Pokemon Go, right?
Yes. So Pokemon Go is really big. Like, okay, mobile games are freaking huge there. And of them, Pokemon Go is doing very, very, very well and is still super active. Like, I would say on average, like the average Pokemon Go day is like the average day playing Pokemon Go was broadly equivalent to when it was at its peak here any day that it rained. So it's like not giant mass crowds of people everywhere, but plenty of stops with lures on them, lots of people doing gyms and raids and just everywhere. Stuff popping up constantly. I really liked. I wound up playing a lot of Pokemon Go and like sort of exploring all of the features that's added since I last played it over a year ago, and it's really cool. They've added a bunch of really cool stuff. I really like the quests. I had a lot of fun just like, oh hey, this wants me to try to get nice throws, or like go spin a bunch of Pokemon things, or like go fight at a gym. You don't have to win at the gym, you just have to fight in the gym. It's like, okay, I'll just go get pummeled at the gym and get progress towards my quest. That's cool. I got a bunch of new Pokemon. I got a Mewtwo.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, I found a raid that was going on, and there were like 20 people doing this raid. So I hopped in, we took down a Mewtwo, and then I managed to catch it with my very last raid ball. I really like their raid mechanic, by the way. It works like the gym mechanic, where you bring your Pokemon team, you have a certain amount of time to take down the thing, and if you and everybody there takes down the like whatever 20,000 CP Pokemon you're fighting, you get a bunch of points based on like your contribution and whether or not your team held the gym that the raid happened at, or whatever. And then that gives you a bunch of like super berries and a number of Pokeballs, which is anywhere from like 6 to like 15 or so. And those are the Pokeballs you have to try to catch the Pokemon that you just raid beat. And so you do your best to try to get it.
And the number of Pokeballs that you have is based on, I think, how well your team did.
Yeah, it's like how well your team did and how I forget like there's like 4 things that go into the contribution that can give you more Pokeballs, but a lot of it is how well your team contributed.
Okay, so what is the most popular team over there?
Yellow.
Really?
Yeah.
So around here, Team Valor is like ubiquitous. Like it is all Valor all the time. When I was in Dallas
locally,
this weekend,
most of the gyms near me are always either red or blue, so Valor or Mystic.
Yeah, so around here, like it's almost always Valor. However, this weekend in Dallas, like it was all blue all the time, like nothing but team.
So what I saw was in like the town center areas like Shibuya, Shinjuku, all the like big central places. those gyms were changing hand. Those gyms were about evenly split, and they were changing hands constantly. Unless they had been like really, really reinforced. It looked like some of the gyms were like very carefully reinforced, and like some had hit equilibrium states where like this is a basically unassailable gym with like, I don't know, giant blissies and stuff. I saw like a 4,000 CP blissy or something completely ludicrous.
They just did redid the CP calculation with the most recent patch so that blissies could actually be killed, mostly.
Yeah, that blissy was nonsense. But yeah, and but then once I got out of those main city centers, I saw a shocking number of yellow team held gyms. But I kept seeing more. It was very weird because mostly I saw red and blue players. I very rarely saw very much yellow contribution in raids, but I saw a lot of yellow held gyms. So I don't really know what's going on there.
Yeah. Like, I am not sure if I've ever seen a yellow held gym around here. Like, Team Instinct is very lowly represented. So did you get any regional exclusives?
I have like 40 Farfetched. I figured I'd grab a bunch in case anybody here in the States wanted them, because I think they're Japan exclusive.
They've had some event distributions outside Japan at this point. You can't get to them normally, though.
Yeah, I have one because something happened, and I don't remember what, but like it was catchable for 2 days. I think Kangaskhan may be the hardest to get, because I know there's been Mr. Mime events as well. Anyway, I am very happy that you're back, Tam.
Yeah, welcome back. It sounds
Thanks.
like you had a great time.
Yeah, it was a really good time. It was a cool trip.
That's awesome.
So this next topic, I don't even know how to lead it in exactly, other than the fact that like I've talked about the weird scenario that I'm in where I spend a lot of time downstairs on my laptop playing games there instead of upstairs on my actual gaming machine. And I am always looking for a good way to somehow remotely play. And I've talked before on the show about Parsec. And it does a really good job, but there were still moments of lag that happened where like the music would hitch a little bit, and then like it would lag out a little bit, and then it would, return back to normal, but it was still too much for my taste. So I got to thinking, and at first it started off as I was going to just buff my wireless network by installing a repeater, which is a seemingly reasonable proposition. However, when I started looking at them, I noticed that one of them, like I have a TP-Link router, and their repeater had a gigabit Ethernet port on it, so that you could plug in something next to it, and have a wired connection. So I started fiddling with this, and I've basically turned it into a really powerful wireless card. So it's plugged into the wall next to my chair in the living room, and I have an Ethernet cable stringing around the outside, and my machine thinks it's connected to gigabit Ethernet, even though the Ethernet is actually bonded to the 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi signal. And shocking enough, it works flawlessly. Like, I cannot tell that I am not sitting at my desktop upstairs. The input lag, any of that, just like even at its best, Parsec had like slightly perceptible control input like lag, and this has basically erased it entirely. And even more so is it's not just Parsec that benefits from it. I've been fiddling around with the PlayStation Remote Play app, and it also feels as though I'm sitting at the PlayStation upstairs. So I am super happy about this sequence of events. It was not the cheapest scenario in the world, because like the refurb repeater that I ended up picking up was like, I don't know, around $50. But my God, does it work well.
I mean, that's only a little more expensive than a power line adapter.
Right. Well, and the thing is like I don't have a really good way of using a power line adapter, because the wall jack next to my router is basically where everything in my office is plugged in. So like I don't have a good clean outlet for me to use it on. Because I had looked into the power line concept, thinking that would be a good option. But yeah, no, I mean, like this effectively probably works as well as a power line adapter. I'm able to get all 300 megabits of my internet connection over this setup. Like when I do a speed test running over the Ethernet port, I get my full bandwidth through the ISP that I would see upstairs connected directly into the router. And like better yet, like we can be on Netflix streaming stuff off my Plex server upstairs, any of that stuff, and it no longer seems to affect the bandwidth to my laptop at all.
So you're streaming off of your PlayStation here?
So yeah, like I've been doing two different things. So I've been using the PSN Remote Play app, and streaming downstairs off of my PlayStation. So that's what I was playing the new God of War game at, and that works just great. The only negative there is like it's only 720p because I don't have a PS Pro, and they will only support 1080p streaming off of PS Pro. For everything else, for me streaming from my laptop to my gaming desktop upstairs, I'm using Parsec, and that's at 1080p 60 frames per second. So like all of the Monster Hunter I've been playing has been that way. I've been downstairs on my laptop streaming it off my desktop upstairs. And I've never really played too much with the actual quote unquote feature of Parsec, which is the ability to play a couch co-op game remotely over the internet with a friend. I subscribe to Parsec so I can start those sessions whenever the hell I want. I've just never done it. Like I'm not really playing any games that fit that scenario. Like the closest thing would be like Towerfall or something like that only supports local co-op. But in theory, you can, just join a session and both play off the same machine.
In the not a surprise category, Towerfall came out on the Switch recently.
I mean, it's a really good local co-op game.
It's true.
And I'm trying to think of, like, other than maybe Cuphead, I can't really think of a local-only game that I'd really want to play remotely over the internet. And you would think Cuphead would be, like, super input lag dependent. So at some point I need to try that. Have somebody join my session and see if there's lag or not. But yeah, like, it is shocking how well this repeater setup has worked. And if you also want to do something silly like this, I highly suggest you check it out. But as far as like the game that I was playing, God of War, I am not really sure how far I've made it into the game. Ash and I were talking earlier, and we couldn't necessarily decide upon what constituted a first boss. But I had been through the two that he had rattled off, plus one additional one. So I am probably 3-4 hours in, maybe. It's a really good game. But what it kind of reminds me of is like if you were playing Horizon Zero Dawn, but instead you played Rost the entire way, and you never you were Rost and you were guiding along a tiny Aloy, because there's a lot of that going on. Also, it's kind of a game about toxic masculinity because there's so many situations where you can see Kratos wants to have an emotion other than rage and then pulls back away from it because he wants to build a tough son that can, take care of himself and can survive anything.
I do have to ask.
Yes.
Starting to play this game made me feel like I was bad at video games.
It
seemed like it was kind of difficult.
I am playing on one of the lower settings, like the next to the lowest.
Okay.
I think it says balanced.
I mean, that's default.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I haven't worried too. Like, it feels like you take a lot of damage. The fight that I now know is a member of Norse mythology. That was hard. Like, that was a really freaking hard fight.
Okay.
Like, no, I mean, that really was a hard fight. Like, that felt like that was purposefully hard. Like, to feel just oppressively so. The thing that I am calling Boss 3, however, was kind of a return to the first thing.
Okay.
Very similar to that first troll. Just a ton of ads to deal with while fighting it.
That makes sense.
I'm not sure if those are actual boss, though. Like,
I have
those
no
may
idea.
just be, like, mini bosses, but It's kind of a fun world to roam around. It's very on rails, though. Like, yes, there are alternate paths you can take, but they are brief diversions from the main path, but it is very much you are walking a path. Unlike Horizon Zero Dawn, where you could just basically roam wherever the hell you wanted.
That's kind of what I would expect. The previous games were entirely linear with some secrets.
And this is
so
less
far, this has been pretty
than that.
similar.
Well, I mean, this feels less linear than those games, but yeah, no.
Only slightly.
Yeah. Most annoying things so far are there's chests that you have to find 3 idols to open. Which, that was fine when what you had to do was break the idols. I have reached a point where they are bells instead of, like, canopic jar-looking things. And you have to have rung all 3 bells before the first one stops ringing to then unlock the chest. And that is significantly more challenging and requires significantly better axe throwing than I currently possess. Biggest takeaway right now is the axe needs a better target reticle. Like, it is not the clearest thing in the world. Like, it is kind of hard to pick out from the rest of the screen at times, unless it happens to be hovering over something it thinks you should hit. The little puzzles are kind of cool. I mean, they're not real puzzles, but like,
if history is anything to go by, they might become real puzzles by the end of the game.
Right, probably. Like, the whole freezing thing has already gone significantly harder to where, like, I had to freeze a thing and then unfreeze and then rapidly freeze another thing so that I could get to the next area. So I have a feeling that's going to continue to ratchet up. But, I mean, it's interesting to me. The game is very interesting. It's well written. It seems to be aware that it's telling this tale of the wages of living on fury alone.
That is the note God of War 3 ended on, so makes sense. After I just killed all of the gods in Gris, maybe this was a mistake.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Like, it's going to be really interesting to see where it goes from here. But I think, like, since I am not really deeply attached to an MMO at the moment, other than Monster Hunter World, I may use this time as time to try and catch up on some of the single-player gaming.
What is combat in God of War like? Because I remember not really liking combat in God of War 1.
It's vastly different. I don't know how to, like, it's not God of War 1 through
you press
3.
square triangle and you beat every single encounter in the game.
Right, yeah. So this feels more like a behind the back brawler kind of game where, like, you learn special moves as you unlock them, and it is still a string of light and strong attacks, but it feels like there's a lot more going on, especially with the introduction of the axe, because you have like this giant magical axe that you throw at things, and then pressing triangle you can recall the axe, and it deals damage to targets both on the throw and on the retrieve. So you can do some interesting things where, like, you can throw it into a target, then walk over to another target, retrieve it so that the axe comes through the target on the way back to you, and like kind of ping pong action off of multiple targets. I'm trying to think of a game that it feels like, and honestly, like, if you
threw the shield and not the axe, it'd be like Captain America, but you throw the axe.
I mean, the general feel of roaming around to the world feels more like a Sucker Punch game or something like that. It feels less like a side scroller that's trying to be 3D, because that's really what God of War felt like to me. Was like, I'm a 3D side scroller. There are still moments, however, where you are asked to mash the QTE button and do like a ripping things apart move, but you can completely ignore that if you don't want to do it. You can seemingly beat everything without ever going into a quick time event.
That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, like, so if that aspect of hit X now, hit circle now, hit triangle now, and boom, you did some combo that is now going to rip the spleen out of the monster that you're just fighting. Like, that's there, but not to that extent. Like, it's when something gets low and dazed, you can basically do like a finishing move on it. But you don't have to. Like, you could just keep fighting and not break the flow of combat.
Some of the tougher enemies have like a break bar that if you combo them and stun them enough, they will like get dazed, and you can then use a more powerful move on them.
Right. And that is handy because like it takes off a lot more health when you do that. But again, it took me a while. Like, I didn't realize that was a thing during the entire first encounter. So like I never did it, and I beat it anyway, and life was fine. So yeah, I mean, like it feels a lot less like God of War, the original God of War series, and this feels like the start of something different. And I've already had people comment like, I really wish I could tell you things without spoilers. So I'm guessing some stuff happens. Trademark. So Kodra, Ash, I hear you both have been doing some nonsense, or is it just Kodra?
No, there was some nonsense. I mean, this was last week's bonus activity. Instead of recording a podcast, we did some streaming and ran the same seed on a Hollow Knight randomizer. What this does is it places almost all of the charms and most of the abilities and moves them around, shuffles them around a bit. It places them in such a way that guarantees that you can get to the things you need to beat the game, but some of them might be in weird places, and you might have to do things in a very odd order because you didn't get abilities in the normal way you would.
It also has difficulty modes.
Yes, but we didn't go into that.
Well, you didn't go into that.
Have you since started to go into that?
I've started to go into that. So, basically, this game, the randomizer will calculate based on the way we played. It was basically, here are all of the things we assume you should have in order to get these items. So, like, if you need double jump, it's going to make sure you have you should have had access to double jump. However, there are a whole bunch of skips you can turn on and basically say, I know enough about this game and I am good enough at a bunch of different skips that you can assume I can get to certain items with alternate sets of gear, which I've currently only turned on one. I've turned on shade skips. Basically, if there is a piece of gear that I could theoretically get by dying, leaving behind my shade, and then bouncing off of my shade to gain access to the next area, the game assumes I can do that now, and will put items assuming that I have access to those skills. But all in all, like, when Ash and I were doing this, like, together, it was really fun. Like, we were sort of calling out where we were going, what items were at what location, and sort of trying to, like, the game became a big game of who can find the dream nail the fastest. We were all searching for the dream nail at the end.
The dream nail is one of the things that is 100% required because you needed to kill the dreamers. There is no negotiating around this requirement in any way. The other thing that's 100% required is the Mantis Claw, the wall jump.
Yeah,
because you just can't get to certain places without it.
So, fun story, I'm playing on Shade Skip mode, and I have every single movement ability except for Mantis Climb. And oh boy, does that leave a whole bunch of things locked off to me. That said, I am doing some... I think you would be proud of some of the creativity I'm coming up with. I just picked up the Monarch Wings, which, that was fun.
I think with Shade Skips on, I think they assume you can cross that just with dash and double jump, I want to say.
Well, no, I have Crystal Heart. But no.
Oh, okay.
More importantly, there is... You know where the spitting guy is, like, sort of raised on a platform and there's a long wall upwards? Shade skips are a whole lot more about verticality than horizontal movement.
Usually, yes.
But in that particular case, I was able to use the grubs on the wall to climb my way up. But yeah, it's a really interesting, like, way of forcing you into new routing. Like, I think that's more than anything what I really am enjoying about this is this game is so very, very multi-routed. Like, you can
This
go...
is true even without the items moved, however.
It is true without the items moved, but you don't, like, you can learn a route and you can use that route. You don't have to think on the fly about that route. You can sort of just know what you're doing. But here, I have to be, like, digging into the recesses of, okay, I have these tools. What routes are actually available to me?
Crystal Peak is always available.
Crystal Peak is always available, but there's not much that's available in Crystal Peak.
You can get through it to the Dream Nail and the Dream Shield.
You can get through it to the Dream Nail and the Dream Shield. Ooh, I can actually... That's a place I can go. I can go get Descending Dark now. Like, this... It's a common joke that Ash and I share is Ash frequently leverages Descending Dark because he's very good at using that skill, and I have never been forced to use it. But this is like the first run where I have been forced to use Descending Dark because that was the first spell I got. So I'm learning how to use these tools, and I'm getting better at the game.
Are you learning that it gives you invulnerability seconds rather than invulnerability frames?
Yes, but I'm also learning that my initial frustration about the windup is real. But yes, so I just picked up Isma's Tier, and now that gives me a whole new world of what is actually open to me that I have to figure out. This is where I typically go, hey Ash, I have Isma's Tier. Does that mean Isma's Tier is open to me even if I can't get to Dung Defender?
No.
Aww. Dung Defender I'm pretty sure I can shade skip to, but that sounds awful.
Unless you have Mantis Claw and a Dash Master and a double jump, and are willing to do nonsense.
I mean, I feel like he's already solidified his willingness to do nonsense.
No, we're talking like real nonsense.
Oh, yes.
There's an option called Magalore Skips, and this option is a meme.
Yes, it's a meme. It's
because it requires you to do frame perfect things, maybe.
Yeah, so there is shade skips, which it's at the top of the list. I'm also going to say it's probably the easiest skips. Acid skips, which is basically skips that rely on you using the Crystal Heart and the Mantis Claw to go under areas that are mostly covered in acid. Those are skips that I'm not good enough at, and I know I'm not good enough at. There's also Fireball skips, which I also know I'm not good enough at because I've tried them several times. And then there's miscellaneous skips, which I'm not really comfortable with. And of course, there's Spike Tunnel skips. Definitely not comfortable with.
Spike Tunnel skip is what I'm referring to. There's a Crystal Dash, which lets you go a long way in a single direction. And you use this to pass through spike tunnels, which have spikes basically directly above and below you. Technically, it's possible to get through those with some other abilities. If you have Dash Master equipped, your dash has a short enough cooldown that you can pogo off the lower set of spikes and dash again before you rise vertically, so you can get through the spike tunnels.
I would point out that's not a mag skip. That's considered RTA. Mag skips are all much worse than that.
I mean, no one does this skip. Yes,
but it's still considered, like, reasonable for humans to do. Like,
yes.
Humans have done this skip. Mag skips are all... This is actually theoretically doable. I don't think any humans have ever done it, though. And they would normally be called Taz skips, but this game isn't actually a game you can Taz, tool-assisted speedrun. So, they aren't even that. Like, this game has too much non-reliable random number generation for Taz's to work. But this is like, these are the nonsense skips that you would see in a lot of other games of this genre. They exist. They're probably intentional. At least some of them are. But yeah, it definitely leads to the question of how do I actually do this thing now?
The other nonsense you've been involved in is something that I have no intention of doing ever, which is Steel Soul mode.
So yeah, I really like this game a lot, and I want to try and get almost all of the achievements.
Have you heard about this game called Getting Over It?
I feel like that game might actually be for me, to hurt me. Steel Soul mode does not seem that bad to me. I in fact got quite far in it. I was 8 hours in. Steel Soul mode is permadeath mode. If you die, the save is erased. And I got 8 hours in. I was probably 80% completed the game, which is quite a bit. And I'm gonna just say I got a little bit cocky. And went into a fight that was way harder than I realized and died. And like the emotional devastation of that was rough. So I don't know that I'm going to be able to do Steel Soul again for at least a little bit, because I was just sort of drained after that.
Recharge your misery batteries?
I guess.
Have you heard about this game called Getting Over It?
Have you played that game?
I haven't at all. I might actually like it quite a bit.
I think it might be true.
Seems likely. But yeah, like, I love Hollow Knight. It has probably ruined me for a whole bunch of these games.
It has definitely caused me to consider, like, Time Spinner is an indie Metroidvania. Seems like it might be great. I'm not sure I even want to pick it up right now, because all that's going to happen is I'm going to compare it to Hollow Knight a bunch.
Ooh, yeah.
But I'm coming to realize that of the Metroidvania, I like things from Metroid and things from Castlevania, and the games have to convince me they're doing both of those things. Because boy do I like the combat of Castlevania, and boy do I like the movement of Metroid. But yes, if you're into Hollow Knight and you like really have played the game and you've beaten it and you want like the new fresh feel to it, give Randomizer a try. It's really good.
If you're on PC.
If you're on PC, that's true.
So is this a mod, basically? Or is it just something else?
Hollow Knight has a semi-active modding community. So yes, there's a Randomizer mod.
I was shocked.
There is also a mod to make the Shadow Dash your default weapon. There's also a mod to make Hollow Knight a ranged character.
I was truly shocked that Monster Hunter World had a modding community.
Official support is not strictly required.
Yeah. However, on that case, like there's several of those mods that I think would just straight up get you banned eventually.
Probably.
There's a mod that makes the store basically sell everything in the game.
What?
That you can just buy it off the store if you have enough Zenny. I don't know how they did this thing. But the one that I'm most interested in puts up a giant flare of light every time something gets broken off of a monster, because finding those stupid little white things on the ground is always hell.
I mean, it's like a Borderlands loot pillar rather than those tiny little things that Monster Hunter has by default. And yes, that seems like a good change.
Yeah, I have not brought myself to install it, but God, I want to, because yeah, that's a usability tweak I can get behind. Capcom has more or less said that so long as it is not changing gameplay, they will most likely not ban you for it, but that's as good of a verbiage as they're willing to give. So yeah, it's just shocking. Like I was roaming around Nexus Mods the other day, and there are games that have active modding communities that I never would have thought of. So it's, if you've not done this thing, I highly suggest you check that out, because there may be games that you're super into that have interesting mods. So, Kodra, what's the Messenger?
The Messenger is a new game by Devolver.
Is this the not Ninja Gaiden game?
It's not Ninja Gaiden.
Okay, cool.
It is Devolver-esque in its humor. It's a game about time travel with a lot of time travel jokes. And it's a game about, like, demon contracts and, like, meta jokes about video games. But it's also a really fun Ninja Gaiden style platformer.
But it doesn't have the Castlevania jump?
What do you mean by the Castlevania jump?
Once you leave, you're committed.
No, like, it does not have that. You have air control.
Yeah, that was always the problem with Ninja Gaiden. And I loved Ninja Gaiden, but, like, it had a rough jump. You got one shot.
So, A, you have air control. B, you have multi-jump. As long as you hit something while you are in the air, you get a mid-air jump. So there's a lot of puzzles that are like jump slash at a thing, jump slash at another thing. Like you're sort of jumping through the air, maintaining like your extra jump maneuvers. There's also items that let you float. There's also items that let you cling to walls. And then you time travel out of 8-bit era into 16-bit era. So it's also kind of Evoland.
Are all the main characters you?
I haven't decided yet. Sure feels like it, though. It's got...
Time travel does some weird stuff.
It has great writing. Like, the dialogue with the shopkeeper is worth exploring. I really enjoy, like, every level there's, like, a tell me a story, and he tells some weird parable, and, like, the back and forth on it is great. And it feels like there is a message trying to be delivered, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure I've grasped it yet. But I'm having a lot of fun with the Messenger. It was sort of a, hey, I should try games other than Hollow Knight for a little bit, and that was the game I picked up, and I've enjoyed it quite a bit. It's definitely doing the genre subversion stuff, though. So you have to be in for that type of humor.
I mean, I feel like Devolver has done a lot to prepare us for a specific kind of humor, especially with E3 presentations.
A lot of their games are not like that.
This game is. Gris, on the other hand, I'm really looking forward to, and it's definitely not that.
Gris as in Gree?
Gris.
Ah, okay. As in spirit.
Hmm. I think it's Spanish for gray, which also means that that S is not silent.
Ah, okay. I was going to say, I definitely heard it from somebody at a booth, but they might have been mispronouncing it too.
Yeah, I was thinking like Gris as in like luck talisman, whatever.
The studio is in Spain, so
okay.
Definitely Spanish for gray.
Gray, not a voodoo thing. So I have some random commentary disconnected from anything before we kind of wrap things up. I spent the weekend in Dallas roaming around half-price books as we do a couple times a year, it seems. And one of the interesting things about the Dallas-Fort Worth area is there is a shocking amount of early Steve Jackson games floating around. Like, a truly shocking amount.
Isn't Steve Jackson games, like, super prolific?
Do you mean other than Munchkin?
I mean, like, it was based out of Austin, so that's one thing. But, like, not just current Steve Jackson games, like GURPS and Munchkin and things like that, but, like, classic era, like the little bitty half clamshell looking things that had tiny cards like the original Illuminati or Car Wars or Boat Wars. I didn't even know that was a thing. I saw like the original Ogre box set, which was like a smallish box, unlike the mammoth thing that was printed a few years ago.
Kickstarter
like,
gone wrong.
It's just weird, like how much original vintage Steve Jackson game stuff I've seen in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And not like purposely, just random stuff at half-price books. Someone must have a deep collection out there that they're slowly selling off. Probably the coolest thing I saw of the weekend, though, was a Doctor Who board game printed by Games Workshop in the 80s. Because it's got like the fourth Doctor on it. They wanted way more than I was willing to pay for it, but it was still cool.
Makes me think of rolling around old, like, vintage game stores. Thalen and I saw a Famicom. Like, just get a Famicom.
You totally should have, because like I have a Famicom, like Japanese style Famicom, because one of my wife's students years and years ago apparently grew up on like a military base in Japan and was willing to part with it. The only problem is like the controls are tiny. Like the distance between the set and the controls is very short. Like it's maybe 2 foot worth of cord.
Yeah. I mean, so I had this thing when I noticed this thing with the when the like SNES Mini and like the NES Mini came out. I don't find that I have a lot of desire to like collect old games and old game consoles. Like I really enjoyed my Super Nintendo and like my Genesis and stuff back when I played them, but I don't have like a desire to have a physical one around and keep on playing it and, you know, blow into cartridges to get them to work.
Like my Famicom is basically now my Nintendo set. I have an adapter and play US games on it.
Yeah. I just don't see myself ever wanting to use that. Like I just don't see myself ever wanting to like sit down and play Famicom games or even like old...
that you don't really replay games much, period.
It's true. And a lot of times I find games are better in my memory than otherwise. Like I loaded up Star Fox. I got to play Star Fox 2, and even though I'd never played Star Fox 2, it was very like original Star Fox, and as fun as the mechanics were, like that game is rough.
I've found myself playing a lot of the Nintendo games that came out with the Switch Online thing. I've played a lot of Mario 3 and Zelda on my Switch recently.
I've touched that.
I mean, it's especially with the D-pad thingy that I put on my Switch, it feels really good. It did not feel so good with the 4 buttons as a D-pad. Also went by Fry's this weekend, and like most of their console gaming area is now just a bunch of random Switch accessories.
The one here at least has a decent Xbox and PS4 section as well.
I mean, they had those too, but like there were like 2 rows for the PS4 and 2 rows for the Xbox, but there were like 4 rows for the Switch.
For
Although
here,
I guess
each
I'm
of those
also
is like
counting
a quarter of an aisle, and Switch is half an aisle.
Oh, really? Yeah, like these are. I guess I'm also counting some of the area that they had some of the NES, SNES classic stuff as well, but because they had a ton of stuff for that too. Different controller designs to plug into your classic consoles. Weirdest thing that I saw of the weekend has got to be Walmart is selling these arcade cabinets that are like maybe 3/4 of the size of a normal arcade cabinet, and each one of them has like 3 to 4 games on it. So like there's a Street Fighter 2 one, and it's got Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter 2 Championship Edition, and like Super Street Fighter 2. It's just really weird to see these pseudo arcade cabinets sitting in a Walmart. Granted, they're like $299, so I don't think they're going to move real well.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, do we have anything else?
Don't think so.
Crosscode is great. It came out on PC recently. You should play it.
Wait, what?
Crosscode, an SNES style RPG based on an MMO. Fictional MMO.
We can save my discussion about the disappointment of Terraforming Mars, the Steam game, for next time.
Aww.
Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we will hopefully see you again next week. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
See you.